Good evening, everyone, and welcome. It's Tuesday, October the 1st, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole. I'm going to be calling our meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. We're going to start with a moment of silent reflection, but before we begin, I want to highlight that the United Nations has designated today as the International Day of Older Persons. This year, the theme is Aging with Dignity. Population aging is a major global trend reshaping societies worldwide. Life expectancy at birth now exceeds 75 years in half of the world's countries. This demographic shift has significantly transformed the caregiving landscape, encompassing a wide range of needs for both paid and unpaid support in formal and informal settings. As populations age, the demand for comprehensive healthcare care and social support services and long-term care has grown substantially. On this day, we reflect on the complex needs of the older generation that has given so much to shape the society and indeed the community of Port Hope that we enjoy today. I also want to wish those who are celebrating a very happy Rosh Hashanah, which begins tomorrow. And finally, I do want to reflect on the growing number of conflicts and wars in the world. So please join me today in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Moving on to our land acknowledgement. The municipality of Port Hope exists on the lands of the Mississauga Anishinaabeg traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. We honor and recognize First Peoples as rights holders and stewards of the lands and waters on which we have the privilege to live, work, and play, including the Ganaraska Forest and River. We pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We commit to actions towards truth and reconciliation by recognizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, strengthening ties with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, especially those who make their home in Port Hope, and learning from Indigenous ways of knowing and being. We do so by recognizing the past and working towards a shared future. Moving on to item number 2, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I note that none were received prior to tonight's meeting. Seeing none. Moving on to item number 3, we have 2 items of correspondence on our agenda. 3.1, Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority regarding Northumberland County Draft Growth Management Official Plan Amendment, and I'm going to ask Councillor Vicky Mink to introduce the matter.
Thank you. So through the chair, this is a report that was brought to the Ganaraska board meeting last week or the week before. So it's in response to the Northumberland draft plan, draft growth management plan, and this was of interest to many people in our community. There's a lot of proposed development in the just outside of the urban area. So I just thought I would bring this forward for easy access. It is posted on the Ganaraska website, so it's there as well. And I just want to take a minute, if you don't mind. Linda LaLiberty, the CAO, and I, we attended the quarterly Conservation Ontario conference or meeting in Richmond Hill last week. And as we watch the devastation happening down in the US right now, these meetings are extremely enlightening, that we have fantastic conservation authorities across the province sharing information and preparing for primarily floods. So I just wanted to share that somewhat of a good news story, and this document that I shared with you reflects that same type of information.
Thank you, Councillor Mink, for bringing that to all of our attention to the forefront. So the recommended action is to receive this for information. Can I get a mover and seconder to receive this item for information? Moved by Councillor Darrell, seconded by Councillor Les. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. The next item, 3.2, meeting notes of the September 19th, 2024 Northumberland Intermunicipal Task Force on Housing and Homelessness, and the Deputy Mayor will introduce the matter.
Raise this to the agenda as part of our ongoing commitment to make sure that members of council and the public are aware of what the task force is looking at. And I'll defer to Councillor Todd if he has any comment, as I was not able to attend that meeting, but he was.
Nothing else to add. Thanks.
Thank you for bringing those minutes forward. So the recommended action is, of course, to receive this for information. Can I get a mover and seconder to receive this item for information? Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Todd. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, items for consideration. 4.1, Report CS 1324, re 2024 to 2026 Committee of Adjustment appointment. And I'm going to ask staff if, and in particular the clerk, to add anything more to the report that she would like to share with us.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So as the report states, we have received a notice of resignation from a member of the Committee of Adjustment, which is one of our quasi-judicial committees and is maybe over here. Okay, yeah. So is that better? I also have a bit of a sore throat. No. Testing 1, 2, 3. I think a little bit better there. Okay, great. So as I was saying, and I will ask the selection committee, because a few of the members are here today, if they want to speak to some of that process. But as the report states, we have received a notice of resignation from a member of the Committee of Adjustment. We received it a few weeks ago, and this is one of our quasi-judicial committees. Is governed by the Planning Act. Members are appointed by council, and the report provides an overview of the number of applicants and the selection of the applicant that is in front of committee for their consideration today. It is council's prerogative to appoint this member, and if they feel that further recruitment efforts need to occur, then as the report outlines, we can do that. However, if council accepts this recommendation, then a resolution to appoint Mr. Conlon will be presented at the next council meeting on October 15th.
Thank you for that additional information. Maybe I'm just going to kick off by asking, can you just clearly delineate for us and for the public the steps in the process that were undertaken to get to this point for our consideration of this appointment?
Absolutely. I'm happy to speak to that process from in general terms, and then also with respect to this committee appointment as well. And I asked Director Davis to step in also for this specific process, because I know that he was part of the selection committee. So appointments to all advisory boards and committees follow the appointment policy, which it was approved by council in 2021. It is a public document. It's available for review at any time through our through request or on the website. Applications are solicited through our website and are advertised through our regular communication channels whenever there are openings. We recently went through a very robust and large recruitment of all of our advisory committees as the terms ended. So many of the reports had come through and were presented to council for consideration as per the policies, as per the policy. When these applications are received, the selection committees reviews the applications, interviews any shortlisted applicants, and then they make recommendations for appointment through a report, which is presented at Committee of the Whole. Council considers these reports and the selection committee's recommendations, and council is the one that is ultimately responsible for appointing the members to that committee. With respect to the selection committee composition, this is usually the mayor's designate as well as a staff lead or staff leads. I also want to note, just as part of that process, reports related to advisory committee appointments are public documents. They're published on the Committee of the Whole or Council agenda. And also, on that note, as per the advisory committee bylaw and the appointment policy, there are a few boards and committees that do fall outside of the purview of the appointment policy. And, some examples of this include the library board, the police services board, as well as the committee of adjustment. These are governed by separate legislation. As I noted earlier, the committee of adjustment is governed by the Planning Act. And so they have, they're governed by separate legislation. They also have different terms of office. So that being said, I do want to note that all recruitment for committees and boards is advertised through our communication channels. It goes through a robust selection process, which is ultimately brought to council for their consideration at a meeting. Perhaps, Director Davis would like to speak to the process for this particular committee of adjustment. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrishma, through the chair. So the recruitment process for Committee of Adjustment in this instance, we posted the opportunity. In fact, we provided a series of talks this year to the library called Let's Talk around land use planning. And one of the things in particular that we spoke to or held a session on was Committee of Adjustment, recognizing that we would probably have a vacancy at that area. And so we wanted to socialize with the community what a Committee of Adjustment was, what it did, and what being a member of the committee involved. That process then when we went out to recruitment, that process yielded 4 excellent candidates. We interviewed all 4 of those candidates. The members of the selection committee were made up of Councillor Attridge, myself, and the secretary treasurer for the committee. Unanimously, we selected Mr. Connolly, although I would suggest that the Committee of Adjustment is small. It only has 5 members attached to it. And if we had more space, we probably would have taken more.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments from around the table? Councillor Less.
Yeah, I just want to publicly thank Marilyn Curson for 23 years of her service. I had the pleasure of working with her for a few of those years. She was very knowledgeable, she was very engaged, and she was quite concerned that she gave the best possible input she could to the committee. And that committee is the best committee, as far as I'm concerned, that we have, and we should be very proud of them.
Thank you, Councillor Less, for bringing that to everybody's attention. And I would just add to say that anybody who's currently serving on committees or boards, anybody who puts their name forward to participate in the business of the municipality, we appreciate that engagement, we appreciate the time, and we appreciate the commitment to serve this community. So just wanting to echo your words as well. So the motion that we have in front of us is on the agenda. I'm wondering if I can get a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Attridge, seconded by Councillor Less. All in favor, and that is passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 4.2, report CS 1424, one-year review of the procedural bylaw approach. And I'm going to ask staff again, and specifically the clerk, if she would like to add anything further to this report.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Members of council, we are approaching the 1-year mark of the procedure bylaw review that we brought to council for your consideration in late October of last year. As we recommended at the time, and as council agreed, a 1-year scoped review of the bylaw would take place, following the passing of that bylaw, to determine which aspects were working well and which aspects could be potentially amended to better facilitate effective meetings. I want to provide a quick reminder to council that the original bylaw review took place over the course of about 11 months. It involved a community survey in which over 130 members of the public participated. We also had stakeholder interviews with all council members, robust secondary research of parliamentary best practices across several comparator municipalities, independent review of the draft bylaw by a registered parliamentarian, and the combined expert opinion of your clerk and the deputy clerk. I was the deputy clerk at the time. That bylaw was approved in November of last year and has been in place since January of 2024. We are coming to committee today to ask to proceed with a community engagement, the scoped community engagement for the 1-year review, which will not be as extensive as the initial review because that was robust and lasted several months. But we will address some items that have been identified through feedback as well as observation over the past year. These are noted in the report and are also in the process of being refined as per our community engagement practices. The report also provides an overview of the anticipated timelines related to this review. It outlines the opportunities for members of the public to provide feedback throughout the process. This is something that we encourage and we welcome. And it is anticipated that a report recommending amendments will come to committee for their consideration in mid-November, and the final amendments will be ratified by council in late November. This is our anticipated timeline for this process. The report that is in front of you today also provides a draft 2025 calendar for your information. We provided this just to give you a visual representation of what 2025 would look like. A proposed calendar for 2025 will also be presented for council's consideration in mid-November. This is a draft version of that. So I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the report. And maybe I'll just kick off by asking my fellow councillors. I know that in the report there were a number of issues that were flagged by the clerk as potentially being reviewed in this process, and I'm wondering if you have any additional issues or feedback that you would like to add to that list of issues that is already set out in the report. Councillor Mink?
Thank you. So through the chair, I don't have anything to add, but just the topic of deputy mayor that was flagged. This is always a topic. No one runs for deputy mayor. It's not elected. It's never talked about at the election period. It's not in any discussions, yet it's the first item of discussion once we're elected and debate. And it's always coming up. What's the role of deputy mayor? And I know in the last survey you said, do you understand the role of deputy mayor? Yes or no, but it didn't extend beyond that. So in the survey, could you offer maybe choices? What is your expectation of the deputy mayor so we can really understand what the community thinks that role is, as well as council? So just that's the only amendment I have, is just to expand that one question.
Thank you, Councillor Mink. Councillor Adam, Councillor Darrell, no? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I have another question, but in answer to the mayor's question for now, I have circulated my input already to the clerk, but for the matter of the public record, I also would like to look at the process and requirements for registering delegations to council and whether those are potentially serving as a barrier or not. I would like us to consider the timing of meetings in addition to, I guess, the location, not the calendar timing, but like the time of day timing. I was struck, for example, by today in the most recent Mayor's Corner, it lists upcoming meetings and they're all at different times. And I wonder whether that might be part of some of the confusion that community members might be experiencing. And I also would like for us to consider potentially the use of or inclusion of some sort of plain language policy in the bylaw that commits to how we are going to use plain language in our procedural, in how we run meetings and communicate how decisions are being made with the public to make sure that we're being as transparent and accessible and inclusive as possible with all residents.
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor. Any other suggestions that anybody wants to flag at this point? I think the plain language suggestion is a really important one because we're obviously very much directed by the Municipal Act, and there's a lot of technical language in that and not always easily translatable. So thank you for that suggestion. Any other questions or comments in regards to this report? Deputy Mayor?
Sorry, my other question was, I'm not sure to what extent the plans are in place for how the public engagement is going to take place. Is it going to be surveys? Is it going to be focus groups? If you have any ideas that you're able to shed some light on that this evening, I would appreciate that. But I also wanted to suggest that I'm really digging this approach to the budget survey, and how council's getting involved with that, and even going out into the community, being part of soliciting input from the community. And it strikes me that most of the areas that are under review as part of this bylaw review are really about how residents and interact with members of council. And it strikes me that it might make sense for council to play a role in the public engagement process itself, so that we're actually interacting directly with residents while we consider how we should be interacting with residents.
I think I just add that we are in the works with respect to sort of the plans for engagement, but there will absolutely be a survey attached to this. I think we noted that in the report, and we are always open to the support of council to help spread that message and make sure people are participating. So we'll take you up on that.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions, additions? Okay, so we do have a recommended action in front of us, and I'm wondering if I can get a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Les, seconded by Councillor Adam. All in favor? Thank you very much. Moving on then to item 4.3. Report DS 2324 re-extension number 5 of draft approval request AGSU 35. I can ask staff if they have anything further to add before council considers the report.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? No? Okay, sorry about that. Good evening through the mayor. If you wanted to give, no? Sorry. Is this any better? Yes, I can tell. I'm going to repeat what you said. Sorry about that. Good evening. If you would like through the mayor to, I can give a quick synopsis of what this proposal is. And okay, so this has been a 13 years application process. It was draft plan approved in October 2011. It was draft plan approval subject to condition that needed to be cleared within 3 years, which that means, the applicant, the proponent had to apply for final approval, clear all the conditions, and get the final approval, register the plan, and start the construction of the building. For the first 10 years, I must say there's not much progress on clearing the condition. We saw the real progress starting in 2022 when they applied for final approval. Since then, in that last 10 years, we have had 4 requests for extensions that have come to the council every 3 years. The Planning Act allows for those extensions when they apply at least 60 days prior to the lapsing. There's a request to the Director of Planning and Development. A report has come to the staff, and then a resolution has been passed by the council. The latest request was last year, a year ago, in October 2023. The request was for 3 years. Staff recommended approval of that request for 3 years. However, council, which is this council, had a discussion. They were concerned about the progress on achieving final approval, and the resolution that was passed at the time only approved 1-year extension. And that 1-year extension will expire on October 24 of this month. So in accordance with the Planning Act, Innovative Planning Solution, which is the applicant on behalf of the owner, applied for a 5th request. And this is the report in front of the council. Staff has provided 2 recommendations. Option 1 was to approve the extension for another 3 years until 2027, or deny the approval.
Thank you very much for that thorough and succinct at the same time overview of the report. Does anybody have any comments, questions, points for discussion? Councillor Less.
If we denied, and we had to go back to the beginning, how much effort and would be lost? Like, are they 5% of the way there, 20% of the way there, or are they just really at the beginning stage? Anyways,
Is this better? Yes. So it is at the discretion of council to extend the request or to deny that. And this is under the Planning Act, and there are no appeal mechanism under the Planning Act to the Ontario Land Tribunal. So if the request was to be denied, then this application is done. And the applicant, they have to apply from the scratch, meaning they have to submit a new application, the fees as per current fee schedule. They need to provide all the reports and studies. They need to look into the new provincial planning statement 2024 and any other provincial plans that may be in effect. And in terms of the condition, if I may, is there are 22 conditions. 16, if we were to go to final approval, they will need to be resolved and met through the clauses in the subdivision agreement, but 7 are still outstanding. I think Todd wants to add something.
Thank you, Theodora, and through the mayor to the rest of council. So, I think what Theo is sort of suggesting is that if council was to deny this or take option 2, that application would be dead. The proponent would have to reapply. Now, that being said, a bunch of work has been done over a long period ago, and so the reality is we would go through the pre-consultation process. We would probably review what has been submitted, and we would give them some direction as to those reports that have been submitted or in studies that have been submitted in support of the current application. Some of that work would be able to be reused, although it would likely have to be updated to reflect new policy, new direction from the province, changing conditions, changing situation in our rural area, and a changed official plan from when this was originally approved. So there would be substantial work, but they wouldn't be going back to starting again, provided that they were submitting an application in support of subdivision that was similar to what was in place. If they submitted something completely different, then that may change it completely. Hopefully that gives you the answer you require.
Thank you for those
Yeah,
answers. And I know Councillor Mink has a question. I'm just going to jump in, going down the horseshoe this way. Can someone just give a really concrete update, and for the public's knowledge, what concrete steps or progress have been realized on this file in the last 12 months?
Through the mayor, I must say that no action has been taken since last October. The 2 most outstanding matters, and which requires more financial commitment and has been outlined in the letter from the applicant, is the County Road 65 realignment. That was initially put in 2011 when county was going to realign the County Road 65, and there was a condition for an agreement of the proponent and the county to benefit from the field that may come from the realignment to be used into the proposed subdivision. However, county did that work and the subdivision did not progress. So county has been requesting since last year, and I've had discussions with the staff at the Public Works, detailed design of the field and what it is the net field that is being required, the cost sharing, etc., and that has not been provided to the. And then the other one is our staff, the works engineer staff, has requested for for update to hydrogeological study, and to be done and to be then peer reviewed by our peer reviewer. It needed a road to go in order to support the machinery going for hydrogeological study, and that hasn't been done either. And in my report, I had put comments from our director being concerned about the lack of progress. And I must say here that the manager, Mr. Rakesh Gupta, is in the audience, and if council wants to ask about what the concrete steps they are proposing for the near future, you may do so.
Yes, Director.
Thank you, Theo. And if I might add to the mayor, the other thing, recognizing that one of the conditions that's still outstanding and was outstanding at last October was related to a hydrogeological study. But we also recognize that as part of the 2024 budget, a funding envelope was provided to the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority to embark in a sub-watershed study for Osaka. So I would suggest that through, if Mr. Gupta was following along, he may not be so excited to do a hydrological study if we are also doing a sub-watershed study at the same time. And so, while that is a large outstanding item that needs to be completed, there potentially is some confusion about who's responsible or what, they may want to wait until our study's done to take some information from that to help them with their own study. I just wanted to point that out.
So maybe I'll just follow up and ask Mr. Gupta if he would like to add anything to what the staff was sharing around the progress over the last year. Please feel free to step up, and there's a little button there on the right-hand side.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to present ourselves. So ours was the first subdivision application in this area, in this hamlet of Osaka, way back in 2011. And at the time we applied and got the approval, there actually was no demand for new custom built houses in that area. So we had to wait, we had to wait many years. And then recently the demand has picked up, and we started working on it practically in 2020. And because the COVID and then I had some medical issues, I was diagnosed with the cancer, so we could not work as fast as we wanted to, because in COVID there was like the services were very difficult to get. But even then we have made substantial progress. We have cleared almost 70% of the conditions. Only two major conditions, as we know, are left. One is the hydrogeological study, and the other one, what's the other one? Realignment, yes. So the county has already upgraded the CR65 road. So the original condition that was put to update the intersection is not really required at this time. But we are working with the county. The responses have been very, very slow from the county, and the reason given to us was that there are shortage of staff and all, and we understand. But we are still working on it, and we hope to resolve that with the county in the near future. The other thing, as Mr. director just pointed out that there's a geothermal study done by underway by the Conservation Authority. So we also are waiting for that. But there was a practical problem that in order to take our drilling equipment into the land, we needed like to build an approach road to go into the exact points, and that was because there was not many new projects in the area, so we could not get the fill to make that road inside. So we are still looking for the fill to make the approach road for going in. And in the meantime, if there is a sub watershed study that comes up, we may have to just take that into consideration too. But now, in the recent years, 2 new subdivisions have come up just east of us, and new houses are being built. There is no reason that why we would not complete whatever is required to be able to register our subdivision and be able to build more houses. We have done a lot of work in the recent years in spite of all the problems that we faced, and we are committed to complete this work, whatever is required. That is why we are here personally to make that commitment in front of you. And
Thank you very much for coming and providing your update to what we've heard. And now I'm going to ask Councillor Mink for her questions or comment.
Thank you. So I'm not so sure. Thank you for answering those questions, but my question was more directed to staff before. So, and it has to do with the subwatershed studies, and you know, maybe you can answer that. So, and I'm a little bit of a different opinion, I think maybe than some of my peers up here, is that I have some feeling a little anxious about Osaka because we have so many developments coming there. Each one of these developments either doubles, triples, or quadruples the current size in and of themselves, each one. So the subwatershed study could have significant impact on those current drafts of subdivisions. So how would that impact? So the fact that this is taking time is actually, for me, I feel a little better. It gives me some reassurance that we're doing it before these developments start. But how would the decision we make tonight, if we go ahead and give the extension, depending on what the subwatershed study says, is that just a matter of redoing the current draft to accommodate whatever the Conservation Authority says? Or is it better to deny it and wait for the subwatershed study to come back and then start from scratch based on that?
Through the mayor, council has the discretionary position to extend and also to impose more conditions on the draft approval. And one condition could be that, you know, depending on the result of the subwater studies, we can add that condition to the draft plan approval. And, you know, that opens, you know, the appeal period for the applicant in that, you know, so that has to be in collaboration with the applicant as well, if I may suggest.
Okay, thank you. So just to the applicant, I think the idea behind the subwatershed study is to help facilitate the application, not to at all put a hindrance on it, and to work together to have a very good development for that small community. So if we were to put that condition onto one of these, how would we phrase that? Thank you.
Maybe can I also jump in and ask, because I know that one of the options here is for a 3-year extension. Could we simply narrow that down to an extension until the point that that study has been completed and the results are in, and some movement can be made one way or another around that? Do we have to extend it for a full 3-year period?
It is in the discretion of council for how many years they can do. They can do it for a year or 2 or 3. So, you know, 1 year can be, or, you know, until the completion of the sub-watershed study, and then it can come back to council at that time as well.
Councillor Todd?
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. One for staff. It's unusual because this file's been open for so long, like we're spanning 13 years. What has changed in 13 years since this thing opened that we need to be aware of that may not be or is in place today?
Through council, through the mayor to the members of council, Theo can start keeping a record here because she may have many more. But I would say fundamentally, you have a new official plan as of 2017 that didn't exist or was different prior to, in 2011 when you got approval. I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Northumberland County even had an official plan in 2011 when this was first approved. So that's new. We are now in a review of that plan, and so both the official plans for Northumberland County and Port Hope have changed. I would also say that the provincial policy statement, which has just been approved and is coming into effect, it's now called the provincial planning statement, will come into effect on October 20th. So I don't know how many official plans or PPSs, sorry, predated, but we're probably on our third one since 2011, I would, as an educated guess. I would also suggest that the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe came into effect and now has sunset during our tenure for this. Anything else? Those are pretty large policy documents, to be quite frank, that have come and gone and or changed or modified. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is bad development because of that. That just, so I just want to be very clear, and then I don't know what else. Like there's, anyway, that's a good lead.
Thanks, Todd. And if I may add it, since the conception, we always had policies in the official plan, provincial policy statement about directing the development in the settlement area, and this still complies and conforms to that. I may say now the changes to the Planning Act, to the provincial planning statement, are to build homes faster. And the delays are not are counter-effective to that principle that we need to move faster with the development rather than holding them on.
And then my second question actually is to yourself. Have you folks done another development someplace else? Or is this your first development?
We today. Hello. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So just today, actually is a very good day today for us. We got approval for adding 245 new residential units in the form of apartments and townhomes on a redevelopment site in Sarnia. We purchased a big public school on a 10-acre piece of land in Sarnia 2 years ago, in 2.5 years ago in September 2021. And we have gone through the process, and today we were approved for adding 245 new units. So that will tell us about our capabilities. Yes. We also have a larger piece on the other side of CR65 in Osaka. We recently severed the development portion of that land, about 50 acres, and we are already planning to come up with an application to build about 50 houses on that land. And there are a few other projects also that we have been doing.
Congratulations on that. And I appreciate the fact that you have new ones coming up. Have you completed one in the past?
In terms of building, no. But in terms of getting the approvals, yes.
Okay. And you know, and I appreciate what you're trying to do. I'll be honest, my concern is 13 years have passed and we're not really getting anywhere with that development. And, you know, you've had a couple of extensions. There doesn't seem to be a much traction happening in those periods. I'm just worried that we're going to do this again. And then we're going to see you in somewhere between 1 and 3 years or whatever council decides the term is, looking for another extension. And it's like, how are you planning on getting this, like the list done?
As we explained, that we only started working on this conditions in 2021. Prior to that, we could not, because there was no real demand in that area for this kind of development. So we only started working after the COVID in about 2021, and in the last 2-3 years we have done quite a bit of work on this subdivision. So, yeah, and we are very, very committed to completing it. And we also want to request that please do not put any more conditions, because that will further slow down. Again, it will slow down. Like, we want to complete it now as soon as possible.
Thank you for those questions. I know that Councillor Mink would like to take the floor, and I believe that you're prepared to put a motion forward.
Thank you. So just before I do that, I do appreciate the highway concern and working with the county, and I understand that road and the curves there, and I know it's not an easy thing to do. And I understand that could be something that further delays this project because it is a tricky intersection. So I understand, or curve in the road. So I'm ready to put a motion on the floor, and I know you say no additional conditions, but I would like to create a habit, hopefully, with this council and then ones to follow, that for future developments in Osaka do meet the requirements of the subwatershed study. That's why we're doing it, and it's, like I said, it is to help facilitate the developments there. So I would like to put option 1, that the council approve the extension of the draft approval for plan of subdivision in part lot 28 concession 5 Osaka for 3-year period from October 24th, 2024 to October 24th, 2027. And you can rephrase this, while meeting the conditions of the subwatershed study. That's okay to phrase it that way.
Thank you, Councillor Mink. Just as a point of order to the clerk, do we have to dispose of the 2 options that we have in front of us in terms of recommended action, or can we go directly to, just for the public's knowledge?
Thank you for that question, Madam Mayor. So Councillor Mink has placed, it's not our day today with the mic.
Try this one.
So Councillor Mink has placed a motion on the floor. This motion requires a seconder. No further action is needed with respect to the other option because that was not placed on the floor for consideration.
Okay. I think that we would like to hear from the CAO, and then I've got Councillor. Okay. Did you want to? Okay. Okay, so we do have a seconder on that, although I think we may need to refine the language a little bit around that, but let's also hear from the CAO.
Thank you. Oh, mine works. Just want to point a couple of things out. The subwatershed study has been previously considered by this council to be a financial commitment of the council. So, you know, if that is the intention, that wording a year, 2, 3 years from now could get called into question as to whether it's a commitment on the applicant or whether it's a commitment of the municipality that they are undertaking that work. So I think that's an important clarification. An additional clarification for council to consider is how that will impact the hydrogeological study. So as our planner has pointed out, that hydrogeological study is a current requirement of the subdivision. We have no idea how that subwatershed study is going to impact the scope of the hydrogeological study. Good, bad, or indifferent, that will be unknown. So just some further clarification around that it's in addition to the hydrogeological study or in lieu of.
Councillor Mink, do you want to follow up?
Thank you. So I think it would be, well, I don't know. Going back to our manager of planning and your recommendation, can you advise?
Through the mayor, this is quite a technical matter that I don't have the expertise, and we'll have to connect with the works engineering, and the director is not here today for any opinion, and maybe with the applicant as well, IPS, on how to formulate the condition and bring it to council. That could be one recommendation. And the timing, I concur with our CAO that how long it will take the sub-watershed study to be completed, and a little closer. Can you hear better? My apologies. So I will repeat. Hydrogeological studies are not my expertise, and we don't have the director of works engineering to give us a further clarification. So I think we need to concur with her and the applicant, IPS, and their consultant for the hydrogeological study. And also I concur with our CAO's clarification that how long the subwatershed study is going to be and what the impacts is going to be on the hydrogeological study. Whether it's going to reduce the number of lots. I mean, it's being proposed to 18 because that will be completely new proposal if there are less lots. So there are some uncertainties with providing that condition and whether it can be completed in time.
Thank you for that. And I know that our CAO has her hand up again, so I'm just going to turn that over to the CAO and then to the deputy.
Not knowing that council was going to table this, I think there's an opportunity for us to take this back and prior to the council meeting for final consideration so that we've kind of worked through all of these nuances, because we're going to turn this into a technical exercise really quick and we're going to potentially miss something. We want to ensure that we're also not pre-approving an Osaka subwatershed study for the 2025 budget in this motion as well, and what the impacts of that are going to look like. So perhaps we can take it back.
Thank you for that. And so are you comfortable with deferring this until we have more information, or is this an additional question? Okay.
I think I want to make sure that we're all clear on the subwatershed study. We approved that in our last budget, right? That was included, that was approved as it was an addition to the 2024 budget that was brought forward by council motion. So that has already been committed by council. Right?
Yes, my apologies. I knew it was either Garden Hill or Osaka, and only one got approved, and it was Osaka, not Garden Hill. So Director Davis can give an update on where that's at. So the budgetary dollars have been committed.
It would seem to me that it's going to be a race between the study and the 3-year extension. So I wouldn't cut off my nose to spite my face. So I don't see what we're giving up by giving the extension, because I don't think you're going to have the study done in time. Just my thought.
So I guess the question is for the council, do you want to defer this and get further technical information presented to us? Do you want, and I see Director Davis has got his hand up, so maybe before I go on, I'll turn it over to him for a second.
Through the mayor to the rest of council. So this subdivision approval, draft plan approval lapses on October 24th. That's why it's at council today. So I believe the recommendation from the chief administrative officer was to consider that we could do some of this work necessary to provide the answers required before the bylaw came forward or resolution came forward on the 15th of October, sorry. So there's probably enough time to do that work and have that ready, as opposed to deferring it. Should you defer it, it would go to committee of the whole on October 22nd, I believe, or would have to come back as early as October 22nd and would miss the window for being approved.
Deputy Mayor.
Right. So then procedurally, then the task this evening would be to provide the direction to staff about what we want to come back. I'm just looking, so, and it's not just technical information because we're deferring, it would be on the basis of, I think the consensus we're hearing is that we want to provide the extension, it sounds like, but also with the consideration of the sub-watershed study. So do we have to pass a motion?
My intention was to,
CAO?
my intention was not to defer, so that would have to come back through the committee of the whole process and then to council because the subdivision will have lapsed. It was to just clarify the language around the subwatershed study prior to council's adoption at consideration at the subsequent council meeting on October 15th, because we were struggling a little bit with that language around the subwatershed study. That was my understanding.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So maybe I'm going to toss the baton back to Councillor Mink since she started us off with all these motions to see. Would you like to put option number 1 then on the?
Yes, sure. So we made the motion already with a seconder.
Mhm.
So are you in the process of just wording that to reflect what the CAO has recommended, or would I need to make another motion?
So if the decision is to defer this matter for additional clarification, no, okay. So okay, I'm going to need a few minutes.
Okay, so just to clarify, the motion is to go with option 1, but with consideration of the subwatershed study, and none of us are technical experts here, so we can't make that a firm direction at this point.
I think what I'm hearing is that you support option 1, which is the 3-year extension, and direct staff to bring forward additional clarification language surrounding a potential subwatershed study condition.
That's correct.
Director Davis.
So through the mayor to council, I think what you're leaning towards, option 1 as a 3-year extension, but directing staff as a second portion of that motion to develop a draft plan condition related to the subwatershed study that's being done by the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority. And I don't know what else. That's as far as I got in my head.
I think we finally landed where we need to land. So I just want to check in with the clerk. I know that that's a lot of information coming at her. So let's just give her a minute to scribe. Councillor Todd?
Director Davis, can you give us an idea of how long that study takes as a subwater? Like, what sort of timelines are we looking at?
Sure. So through the mayor to the rest of council, I've been in conversations with the GRCA quite a bit recently. There's 2 projects that we are working towards. One is related to floodplain mapping, which was also supported at council in the 2024 budget. That window has opened from the federal government, so we are focused on that. However, we are also working with the GRCA. I believe a draft terms of reference have been developed between the 2 organizations as we move forward with that project. So we are on the cusp of starting that work, but I would have to I don't know how long the technical work would take. I would defer to the GRCA for that, and I would have an answer at the next meeting. I just don't know have it at my fingertips. But we are moving on that project.
Maybe you can just give us general, like how long do these types of things typically take?
Through the mayor to the members of council, this is my first subwatershed study, so I don't know. Mr. Gupta seems to know more than I do.
You need to turn the microphone again.
We just want to submit that we have a larger parcel just on north side of CR 65 where we are expecting about 50 lots. So if any additional water subshed study is to be implemented, then maybe you can do on that bigger parcel. but please let this development of 18 lots go through with the existing conditions. So we don't impose additional conditions that can possibly lead to delays. We want to complete it and get going with these 18 houses.
Thank you. Clerk, do you have shall we hear the clerk and then I'll turn it over to you? Oh, okay. Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, I just pulled out the motion that Councillor Mink brought forward related to the sub-watershed studies, which did have the detail of how much we were approving, and it was for a cost to be held over 2 years for the Osaka sub-watershed study.
And just a point of clarification, that's budgetary implication, but does that necessarily tell us how long the actual study will take? I think those are two separate issues. But turning back over to the clerk, do you have some wording for us now?
Yes, just based on the discussion and some of the feedback received by members of staff, the motion on the floor moved by Councillor Mink, seconded by Councillor Pearson, that council approve the extension of that's me, that's not the mic. Sorry, folks. That council approve the extension of the draft approval for staff for plan of subdivision file number AGSU 35 in part lot 28, concession 5 in Osaka for a 3-year period from October 24th, 2024 to October 24th, 2027, and that staff be directed to bring forward a draft plan condition and additional clarification language considering the subwatershed study.
Councillor Mink, does that reflect your intention with the revised motion?
Yes, it does. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
And Councillor Adam, are you comfortable with that language as the seconder? Okay, so we have a mover and seconder for that motion. Any further discussion? Any further questions, comments? Okay, we'll take a vote on that. All in favor? And that is passed. Thank you. Moving on to report 4.4. DS 2424 Redestination Marketing Service Review 2024. Staff like anything to add before council considers this report?
Through the mayor to members of council, I think the report is pretty straightforward. It sort of gives an overview of what destination marketing work has been conducted throughout 2024, but and it's pretty high level, but happy to give any or respond to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director. I know that there's many of us here that really appreciate metrics and reporting on those kinds of metrics, not looking at you, Councillor Todd. But I sort of wanted, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper, and, you know, obviously the reach and the statistics that are in the report really show the benefits of having moved in this kind of direction. But I'm wondering, are you able to give us any sense? And I know it's really difficult because we've had a bit of a challenging last number of months with projects in our community, but can you give us a sense of what actually the economic impact might have been on the community of all these improved metrics working with this particular organization?
To the mayor, so I don't have specific economic impact. What I would suggest, though, is that in a year, and I think it's really challenging in a year like 2024 with Walton reconstruction happening. I think, you know, the metric that we look to is a lot of our tourism-centric businesses that are on the main street have been able to survive this long because we've invested as much as we have in destination marketing this year. I would be concerned if we hadn't put money into destination marketing, what the conscription of the businesses on the main street would be. I could tell you that if I look at the sort of volume of traffic, we are seeing substantial decline in volume of traffic year over year this year. However, we have seen some significant upswing in the fall, and we're very pleased to see that. Economically, though, I don't know how well the businesses are doing. Or well, I do have a sense or taken the temperature of how some of those businesses are doing. but I couldn't tell you what the economic impact of our investment was this year, like I would be able to possibly in future years.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about this report? Councillor Less.
I know a new study will be coming forward before the end of the year regarding next year. But I'm a big believer that once you get people here, there should be some sort of visitor information center like we used to have available so that people don't flounder around. So we'll be looking towards that.
Thank you, Councillor Less. So the recommended action is listed on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Darrell, seconded by Councillor Todd. All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Moving on to report item number 4.5, report FS 1424, re-prescribed fees for services. Does staff have anything further that they would like to add before council considers this report?
Thank you. This is our annual review. We're bringing it to committee in advance of posting it on the website for awareness of the public and any comments. And then anticipate following that we would bring this forward for approval, aligned with the approval of the budget, as these increases would be reflected in the annual budget. You'll see some, typically we would expect some increases where it makes sense, and this is part of the offset with the levy, right? So we have user fees to help recover. Obviously, some areas are full cost recovery. Others, others is a much smaller portion, but that is part of the effort to shift some things from tax base to user pay. So that's the premise. Happy if there's any questions.
Thank you, Director Baxter. Any questions or comments regarding this report? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
A while back, another member of this council raised an issue that I hadn't really thought about prior to that comment about the subsidized fees or lower fees that are offered to some residents of the community, being seniors, and whether in 2024 seniors by and large are the members of our community who are in most financial need or not. I don't pretend to have the answer to that, but I wonder if there was any consideration of that when looking at the updates to the fees for service, especially around, I'm looking at Director Snook, especially around parks and recreation, around whether there are other groups in our community who have higher financial need who should be considered for subsidized access so that they can access that kind of programming.
And just in terms of just jumping off at that point too, that was going to be a little bit of my line of questioning in terms of the next report. And in particular, just the age classification that we extend to seniors, which is at 55 plus, and whether or not there should be some discussion of whether or not that should be a little bit more nuanced, and whether or not we should be looking at different ways of disaggregating the population in terms of where the greatest need is for certain supports and subsidies. So I know that maybe we're jumping ahead to the next report, but maybe we'll start with this report and any comments that you'd like to share on that.
Yes, thank you through the chair. So 2 reports on the agenda tonight that do kind of cross over with that, specifically with the classification within our fee bylaw, so schedule specific to Parks, Recreation and Culture. That has been a continuation of the identified ages with subsidized at a higher rate for older adults or seniors and youth. That's been a continuation of our practices in the past. We complete comprehensive fee reviews on a regular basis. So our last one was completed in 2022, and we're anticipating another update in 2025. We made the commitment to our community following the pandemic to get through kind of a recovery phase, and then we'll be undertaking that review. Part of the considerations for the classifications within the fee bylaw in that schedule are also attributed to some of the review through the Leisure Services Master Plan, and they align currently. So when we get to the subsidy conversation with that report, there are some of those considerations that review has occurred through those processes.
Okay, thank you. So focusing on the report in front of us, which is report 4.5. Does anybody have any further questions or comments? Okay, so can I get a mover and seconder for the recommended action here? Moved by Councillor Mink, seconded by Councillor Adam. All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Now moving on to the next report, 4.6, with some of the overlaps of issues. Report PRC 1124, re 2024 update to the Municipal Recreation Program Subsidy Policy. Director Snook, would you like to add anything to the report?
I'm actually going to let Eileen, our Manager of Recreation, Culture and Events, do a brief introduction of this report.
Hello, good evening. You can hear me okay? Great. So this policy, through the mayor to council, the report is presenting an update to our existing policy that is out of date. The last update was in 2015. This is the Municipal Recreation Program Subsidy Policy. It's largely a housekeeping update, but it is also to reflect the 2022 low income cutoff eligibility, which is set by Statistics Canada. It's also to increase the number of eligible programs that a resident is able to participate in, to add drop-in programming, as well as 55 plus memberships. And it is to increase the total subsidy per person from $200 to $300.
Thank you for that. Any questions or comments regarding this report? Okay. Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder for the recommended action? Moved by Councillor Less, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to report item 4.7, report PRC 1224, re-amendment to govern use of parks bylaw relating to continued night fishing rules. Does staff have anything further that they would like to add before council considers this report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report brought forward today is a result of the regulatory changes that the ministry brought forward effective September 1st related to salmon season or the fall fishing season specific to the Ganaraska River. So prior to that regulatory change, the fishing season would have closed on September 30th. With the change in place, there was restrictions to no fishing in certain areas of the river from September 1st until October 14th. So on October 15th, the regulation allows for fishing along the river. So this change from the governed use of parks has an impact to no night fishing or access to the river for night fishing. This was implemented, I believe, in 2016, 17. I can't remember. I should have checked my report, but it has been in effect and has been effective from a staff perspective and opinion since that time to reduce negative behaviors at a time where enforcements are not on the river, being specific to nighttime. So the recommendation is to make that adjustment to align with the new regulatory change.
Thank you, Director Snook. Any questions or comments from around the table? Councillor Adam.
Thank you, and I just want to thank you for bringing forth this report. I think it's a very well done report and very forward thinking. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, can I get a mover and seconder for the recommended action? Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Todd. All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Final report, item 4.8, report PS 1324, re-automatic aid agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Port Hope and the Corporation of the Township of Hamilton. Does staff have anything further that they would like to add before council considers this report? Director Williams.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The Fire Protection and Prevention Act provides that a municipality may enter into an automatic aid agreement to provide and receive initial or supplemental response to fires, rescues, and emergencies within our municipality. In 2022, we completed a fire master plan, which made recommendations for us to enter into automatic aid agreements with surrounding municipalities. And due to that, that would enhance levels of service that we provide to members and residents of Port Hope. A pilot program was undertaken in 2023 to collect data that was analyzed and related to the proposed response agreement, which incorporates both areas of municipality of Port Hope and Hamilton Township in the area of County Road 28 and Ganaraska Road. Automatic gate agreements are considered in municipal areas to provide the first response to a location that has another fire department in closer proximity, regardless of municipal boundaries, to ensure that the closest available assistance is dispatched to an incident so that residents have the quickest response to their needs. Over the course of the pilot project, including the past several weeks, there have been several emergency responses where both municipalities of Port Hope and Hamilton Township have seen the benefits of such agreement. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Director Williams. And indeed, we have really benefited from that mutual cooperation. And I think it really does highlight the ongoing importance of finding ways of working together, of sharing services and providing those kinds of supports when our neighbors and in turn when our neighbors can provide us with support in an emergency situation. So thank you for bringing this report forward. Any questions or comments around the table? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder for the recommended motion? Moved by Councillor Darrell, seconded by Councillor Mink. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. At this point, we are going to take a 10-minute recess. Thank you. I think we're ready to reconvene. And we now move on to item number 5, notice of motions, 5.1, free public transit for youth. And this motion was, of course, placed on the September 24th council agenda to provide notice to the public, and excellent context was provided for that motion by Councillor Attridge. It was moved by Councillor Attridge and seconded by Deputy Mayor Holloway Woodwani. And at this point, I'm going to ask them if they would like to speak further to this motion.
Thank you. And I spoke last time, so I'm happy to have Deputy Mayor speak this time.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I did want to add a little bit of context in addition to the information that was introduced by Councillor Todd at the last meeting, which I did watch from my hotel room. So currently the KPR District School Board policy requires students at the high school level to walk to school if they live within 3.2 kilometers from the school. In the context of Port Hope, this means that students who live on the east side of the Ganaraska River all the way over to Rose Glen have to walk to school, as do students in our rural community who are living within, a couple of kilometers distance adjacent to the urban area. Currently, 53% of the students who attend Port Hope High School walk to school, many on taking routes like Jocelyn Street and rural roads that have no sidewalks and which are less than ideal from a safety perspective. In addition to the information that was garnered through Councillor Todd's work with the former mayor and other staff, the fact that this transportation issue is a barrier to enrollment at Port Hope High School was also something that we heard a lot, both Councillor Todd and I, when we were board members with a short-lived organization called the Port Hope Education Network. And it has been a message we've heard loud and clear over the last number of months through a listening campaign that I've been engaged with in collaboration with a group of community members that includes parents and some retired school administrators from the KPR District School Board. Through that listening campaign, we spoke to parents of current students and prospective students, current high school students at Port Hope High School students who have elected to attend school elsewhere, along with parent representatives of the parent councils of Port Hope High School and their feeder schools, alumni, and importantly, the principals of both Dr. Hawkins and Port Hope High School, who all highlighted that the transportation or lack thereof provided by the board to students who live fairly long distances from the high school is a barrier. And many students who are from Port Hope who would otherwise like to attend their community school elect instead to attend St. Mary's School in Cobourg because they get free busing at their doorstep to get them to school. The other thing that came out of the listening campaign this summer, especially with students and parents who are currently attending the high school, is that our current bus schedule either gets students to school at least half an hour, if not 40 minutes before the bell, which is at 8:15 a.m. So getting there early, that means 7:30 in the morning, or approximately 13 minutes after the school day starts at Port Hope High School. I believe that we have a collective responsibility as a community to support our community school and our students. And I also believe that a commitment of this nature by the municipality to support students in our community school will be helpful to us as a community when the time comes to make additional requests of the school board to fill some of the other gaps that are acting as barriers to enrollment at Port Hope High School. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that additional information. And indeed, there's a lot of movement in the community and within this council table to be advocating for and pressing for the next chapter of Port Hope High School, the renewal, the revitalization, and the assurance that this becomes the best high school in our community and arguably in the county. And maybe we'll have students busing from Cobourg to come to Port Hope in the near future. But obviously there's many problems in terms of strengthening the services and the programming for the high school. Transportation is that essential first step. Students need to get to school on time and they need to get there safely, and we don't want to have an impediment. So I thank you both for bringing this motion to the table. I would like to discuss some of the details because I do have some questions and potentially some offerings in terms of how some of the points might be just redefined. But before we get there, I'd like to hear from everyone else around the table. I'm also just interested in knowing more information about the budgetary implications and whether or not we could delineate between the students going to Port Hope High School, so having absolute free transportation to get to the school and get home safely after the school, versus providing free transportation at all times for youth in the community. I think that's a separate discussion, not to say that other communities haven't moved in that direction. Burlington and Oakville are offering free busing for all youth and extending that to seniors, but that has budgetary implications, and I for one would like just a little bit more information about that before I'm ready to make a decision. But Councillor Less?
Agree with you more, and I have no objection whatsoever to what you both of you are saying about the high school, about our students and the safety. I do have a concern that we have a bigger transportation issue, and you touched on it with seniors, with getting people to and from hospitals, to doctor's appointments. It's a more robust discussion we have to have around transportation. We are having our strategic planning sessions coming up, and I think they should form part of it. The barrier you're talking about in shipping kids to St. Mary's, they've made that commitment for this year, so we have a little bit of time to work on that aspect. But on the other hand, we don't have time to work on safety related issues. So I'm sort of caught in the middle, but I think it's a bigger discussion.
Councillor Mink.
Thank you. So I appreciate all the comments so far, and we knew that the busing was a problem. I went to a high school in 2019, the beginning of the year, and this was a root cause that was discussed as to why students are going to Cobourg. And I agree that we need to come up with a solution for the students. However, and I agree with the comments that the mayor has made, but I think having these discussions at budget isn't the place for that. I feel a little bit like we're kind of coming up with some transit discussions we've had this year. The free transit to downtown. We had deregulated taxi with rideshare. We've been talking about the community care and the Rolls bus, and now we're coming up with this solution. And I kind of feel like I'm having things kind of surprises presented to me almost on a weekly basis. And I think we're identifying that we have some concerns in the community around transportation and transit. And I think a better place for this is in the strategic plan. I think we need to look at all aspects, and we need to take the recommendation from our staff who has the time to come up with options, hear from the community. And I think that's where it belongs. I think this budget, we're not necessarily going to change anybody for this school year, but we can have these discussions early next year and talk about it in the fall. One more thing, sorry. The deputy mayor spoke about rural also has to walk. Well, if we give free transit, that we're still giving a gap. So that's one example of where I'm demonstrating that this shouldn't be at budget, but it should be a strategic plan, strategic planning discussion. So I would like to either modify this to say strategic planning at the end, or just refer it to the strategic plan.
Okay, yeah, let's just go in the, is that okay? In the order? Yes, Councillor Adam.
Thank you. So I really do appreciate this. But going to what you had said about the about not just giving it to all youth, I completely agree, and that was one of my biggest things. Now I don't necessarily mind the fact that a bus gets 30 minutes before school. I think being early instead of being right on time is always a benefit for everybody, and for everybody to learn in the future too, instead of being late frequently. I know that when I went to school, I got bused, and I was a rural resident for a period of time, and I arrived at school almost an hour early, and it never changed the way that my life worked. As well as at one point, I was living in Port Hope going to Coburg, and it was the same thing. I arrived at almost an hour early. So I don't really mind that. I think that the way the transportation works is great. Now, I don't think that this should ever be turned into like a shuttle service. I believe it should go on a route. And I personally believe that to maintain it, that it is for students to get them to school, it should be linked to something like a student card, and that would be your access for your free. Otherwise, we may potentially have 19 and under using it for other things, not necessarily for school, potentially even maybe using the Coburg shuttle, that type of deal. So that's more where I'm looking at, is more specific to tie it into the school through a student card. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Gerald, did you want to, Councillor Gerald? Sorry, I didn't, you got to put your hand up a little higher. Yeah, please go ahead.
I'd just like to say that I was a walker back in the day, so I would definitely appreciated a ride to school. I think at the end of the day here, I think our safety is the major concern. As a father of two young kids, if my choice come down to sending them out the door up Jocelyn Street or a bus to Coburg, they would be headed to Coburg, just for the safety aspect of it. That's.
Thank you for that. Councillor Todd.
Right, thank you. And I appreciate everyone's comments, and I agree. I think we do have a bigger transit play here that we probably need to discuss as we go through through budget. What I would ask for consideration as we go through this one is, we're already providing free transit through the Walton Street reconstruction, which is going to continue into early November. So nothing changes there. The only difference is we are going to then start butting up against winter. And although, as we go into a larger budget discussion, we should keep that in mind. There is a safety issue. Like, it's not about diverting students at this point. It is simply about those kids who are walking Jocelyn in the snowbanks or on the street. Could we not just extend it through to the end of this school year so that those students are safe? And we can discuss budget and transit afterwards.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. I'm just going to jump in, and then the Deputy Mayor wants to weigh in as well. I really appreciate as well the conversation that we've had around the table. I think that there's lots of different moving parts to this discussion, from safety to, whether or not people should be arriving early or not, but I think there's two really key issues here. One is that we do know, we've heard, as the Deputy Mayor has stated, that for parents and families and students that this is an issue. It's not an issue that we need to flesh out here at the table of, whether or not it is absolutely an issue. So the second thing is safety, and I think Councillor Darrell, you raised that very clearly, and safety is not something that waits, right? Safety is a concern now. It's going to continue, especially as was noted in the winter months, when there's less access to just moving around, and we don't know what kind of winter that we're in store for. And third is, I do believe that we need to have a conversation at the table around our strategies and our strategic plan around these issues. So I do agree with you, Councillor Mink, absolutely. But I wonder, is that going to delay signaling to the parents and to the students that we really do, and in fact to the board, that we do have a plan for improving the transportation and the safety of the transportation to students in our community, and so these are some of the things that are going through my mind. Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Mink.
Thank you very much, Marilena, for those comments. I think that's a really important point. I can appreciate that this might be one part of a larger conversation around transit. Very happy to get into that through strategic planning. But let's be honest with ourselves, things move really slowly when we look at things through those kinds of processes. There is a cohort of students at Dr. Hawkins right now who is going to be making their decision about where they go to high school in the coming months. Now is the time to send the signal to those students and parents that we have their backs, that we're going to make sure that they can get to their community school safely and conveniently, so that they don't have to consider that when they're choosing where they go to high school. That's a decision that has an implication of 4 years and longer on that entire cohort of students, both on those who will spend 4 years commuting all the way to Cobourg and back to access high school, and for those who choose to stay at Port Hope High School with lower enrollment, which has an implication on their high school experience. So my ask of this council is, if we would like to have a separate motion that calls for a more comprehensive review of our transportation within the municipality, by all means, let's do that. But let's be considerate of that cohort of parents and students who cannot wait another year for us to tackle the transportation issue for Port Hope High School. As has been noted by Councillor Todd and myself and the mayor, we've known that this is a barrier for years. So they've already been waiting, and entire cohorts of students have already missed out on the opportunity to attend school in their home community. Let's not wait another year and cause that to be the case for the generation that is at Dr. Hawkins right now.
Thank you to the Deputy Mayor, and I do want to note, I think that there are definitely other councillors that really appreciate the importance of the transportation issue, and I think also just sort of an observation that the transportation is a real key issue, but what we need to work on for the high school is going to be absolutely multi-pronged, but this is an important first consideration. So Councillor Mink and Councillor Adam.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for clarifying that, because I think all of us have known for years that this is an issue. So again, I'm not in disagreement whatsoever that we need to do something. It's the way this is coming to me, and that we're not getting this in the form of a staff report that's giving us the best recommendation. We're saying age 19 and under for budget, that's the answer. And I don't have that confidence to say right now that that is the answer. I would like more information. I know that we do have student passes, and from what I understand, I think there is opportunities for some people who cannot afford it to have free passes, and I don't know if that's true, but that's what I heard. So I would like more information on this. I'm not sure why this didn't come in the form of a staff report, and I would prefer that it come back to us by staff making a recommendation considering the entire scope. If it's timing, I would like it to come back that way, but I still think the report in and of itself should be, so I have one here, free public A notice of motion regarding free public transit for youth be referred to the 2024-2028 strategic planning process. So I think that's a motion we need to have on the floor. Maybe it's a separate motion coming off of this, so we don't lose sight that we need to look at it holistically. But this motion that we're making right now, I'm not in agreement. Disagreement. I think that the way it's coming back, how do we figure this out? How do we fine tune the details without a staff report?
So I'm just going to go around in the order that hands came up. So Councillor Adam.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate what you're trying to say there, and I do agree. But I do note that on it, it does say that it's council directs staff to consult with the Port Hope High School to present to council a plan for it. So it isn't like an immediate thing right now. It is actually getting the staff to do that. So I just wanted to highlight that. I didn't, not my motion. I'm just saying that. I did want to ask the director just a quick question, if you don't mind. How many people does our public transit fit at a time?
Through the mayor to members of council, the current buses fit between, depending, so they are accessible and allow for people with assistive devices. So if you have multiple people on carts, so to speak, it limits the number of people, but generally we can fit between 8 and 12.
8 and 12, thank you. And do you know the ridership right now for like mornings, let's say, or even afternoons? Like what I'm trying to get at is how much room do we have on these buses right now to transport? Like, would there be only room for 3 or 4 more students, or would there be room for however many we might actually need? And what are those differences?
Through the mayor and members of council, I don't have the exact ridership at the various hours of the day, but I mean, there's still some room on the buses, generally, depending upon the run that we do. We have seen gains, certainly, in the numbers of riders on the buses since the in-town transit has become free during Walton reconstruction. However, what I will say is that we are seeing more volume of rides on the buses, but the number of new riders in the system isn't substantial. So really what it is people who are already using the bus are using it more frequently because they don't have to pay per ride anymore. But we're not seeing, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just suggesting that, we haven't seen a ton of growth.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I don't remember. Okay. Councillor Todd and then Deputy Mayor. Go. Oh, I'm going in order that the hands came up.
Yeah, that's totally fair. So Councillor Mink, I appreciate the need for additional information and to make the decision. I would note that a staff report did come forward to us to make transit free during Walton reconstruction. We did not have this level of discussion during that one. We actually passed it very quickly, and that opened up transit to the entire town, let alone a segment of the town. The other thing I would note is the kids are able to ride for free right now. Like, as far as the numbers and are they able to handle the capacity, it's currently free transit right now from September all the way through into November. They're on the bus. All we're doing is looking at it and just saying, let's keep it going. And of course, the staff will be able to come back and talk about it if there is any budget implications. But Councillor Adam, to your point, if it's a matter of holding up a student card as you get on so we can keep this going, I think that's an important note. But nothing is really changing based on this. Keep on keeping on, just get them from walking on the slippery streets and onto a bus.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
I will preface my comment by saying I personally don't see what the downside is of youth having free transit, period. Even if they're using it to get to a part-time job or an extracurricular activity, to get home safely after a night out, whatever it is. That said, my sense in hearing the comments from my colleagues here is that there is a hesitation to move forward with the motion as currently drafted. And I would, well, I think what I would say, what I'm asked, let me finish. I was like, Let me get to the punchline first, then you can tell me if it was a good one. I wonder if at this point, if Councillor Mink is planning to put forward a motion that would bring transit to transportation discussion to the strategic plan, then perhaps this motion could have a friendly amendment that replaces the words youth age 19 years and younger with Port Hope High School students. That addresses Adam's comments, it addresses Councillor Mink's comments, and I would be open to receiving that kind of friendly amendment.
So I'm going to jump in since I don't get to put my hand up. I think there's also another issue that we haven't fleshed out fully, and that is it's one thing to say, okay, student card, get on the bus with existing schedule. Let's hope we've got enough spots on that bus. But are we also considering a change in the schedule for the bus? And do we actually know what those implications might be if we needed to add, for example, another bus to the route? It's just something that I'm thinking about, because if the volume of folks on existing buses is such that you could only fit 2 or 3 more students on the existing schedule, whether it's coming in at that earlier time, do we need to both do an adjustment on time and provide additional busing? And again, I'm just wondering what that might look like. Councillor Mink?
Thank you. And to the Deputy Mayor, I think what the Mayor has just asked is sort of the point I'm getting at, is that we have so many questions, and budget day is not the time for us to be answering these questions and making these decisions. Is there capacity? Like, we could be here half a day talking just about this topic on budget day. So that is my concern. If we want to give free buses to under 19, then amend that, and let's just. But if we're going to get specific, is it going to hold enough? Will it meet the Bell schedule? Are they going to Port Hope High School? Those are long discussions that we need to work out. So budget time day is not the day for those. So I did put a motion, I did throw out a motion as well to add on to this one, was that we free public transit for youth be referred to the 2024-2028 strategic planning process, so that, just like you said for Walton, we just made a decision and we just said go. So maybe that's what we do, but then we refer the bigger discussion to the strategic plan.
Deputy Mayor.
Just in response to your concern, Councillor Mink, I think it says for consideration in the 2025 annual budget. I don't think that precludes staff from bringing forward a report in advance of that. I see this approach as being actually pretty similar to the approach you and I used last year in relation to the sub-watershed studies, where we brought forward a notice of motion asking that staff be prepared to bring forward a consideration for sub-watershed studies in the budget. And I thought that was actually a really smooth and effective process, because it meant that staff had the time to look into all of those details based on the conversation at the council table. But we made sure that it was done in time for being considered in the upcoming budget.
And I see that finally, because we haven't heard from the CAO on this discussion, the CAO would like to weigh in.
My turn. Staff is fully prepared. We knew that we've had lots of notice in regards to the notice of motion. We know what the intent is. We know what the potential, we don't know the exact impact on the 2025 budget and moving forward, exactly what that's going to be. But in the works, there is internal conversations happening based on all of the transit discussions, rural roles, community care, and then this notice of motion came up. We actually kind of put a pause on the internal workings of that staff report to incorporate the impacts of this notice of motion on that staff report to be delivered in advance of budget. So, Councillor Mink, to your point, you're correct. The day of budget, we don't want to have a 3-hour discussion on transit for sure. So staff is going to ensure that that does not happen by giving you the information that you need in advance of budget. That said, I don't think you need to adopt a motion to push things through the strategic plan. It's completely up to you, but there will be plenty of opportunity for wholesome discussion to raise all of these items organically throughout the strategic planning process. Organic discussions and bringing things up is very, very important instead of pre-planning what those discussions are going to look like, but completely understand and will support you if you move forward. But staff has the information that we need to be able to provide you with what you need in advance of budget. Not saying you're going to like all of it, but we'll give you the information that you need.
Thank you to the CAO. And I guess just, I don't want to keep flogging this point, but from my own perspective, I really want to focus this effort on the students of Port Hope High School. And I think that any broader discussions about free transit, although I'm not in principle against it, I really want to be targeted for the needs of the students and to make sure that whatever is on offer actually makes sense for those needs. So I'm uncertain that the existing busing system is effective for those needs. So will we have enough, staff understanding of this motion to also consider changing the time or altering the time or having the potential to adding buses or not? Or are we just going to pass a motion to say that we're going to be providing free busing for our high school students using their student cards within the existing busing schedule, albeit that understanding that that busing schedule is not ideal, but according to Councillor Adam, it's okay to get to school a little bit earlier. Deputy Mayor.
As I said, I'd be happy to, for a friendly amendment that specifies that this is for Port Hope High School students. The wording of the motion does already ask for staff to consult with the high school and bring forward a plan that aligns with the Bell schedule and accommodates extracurricular activities. Are you suggesting that you want that removed from the motion? Or you just want to be able to consider the implications of changing the transit schedule to align with the school?
Well, I definitely want to be focused on Port Hope High School students. So shelving the free public transportation to a future discussion. Still want to have that conversation. But also, yes, looking at the transit schedule and what it might mean, getting that information ahead of the budget conversations, what it might mean to change the schedule or add additional transportation. But I think that's embedded in the spirit of this. Councillor Mink?
May I just ask one question to the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Todd, who I think you might know this information because you're in the sessions. How many rural kids will be walking on rural roads to school and will be left out? Because obviously transit won't. So we'll have a few people that have to walk on rural roads. Do you know that?
Deputy Mayor.
Sorry. When I was provided with the statistics about busing from the principal of the high school, unfortunately, she didn't delineate between urban and rural students who are currently walking. But the community group that I've been working with is about to launch a broad community survey that will be going out to current, prospective students, parents, prospective alumni, the whole shebang. And this is one of the issues that we're going to be trying to delve into a little bit deeper. And I expect to be able to answer some of those questions through the results of that survey. And I'll make sure to share that with staff and with members of council when that's available.
Councillor Adam.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out one thing about potentially changing a schedule to accommodate the school. There are other riders that are potentially using it to get to work on time and other things too. So there's a lot of implications by changing the schedule. And I think I go back to, I don't really mind it when people get there, let's say a half an hour early so they can get to their locker, put their things in there, talk to their friends before they go to class, and hopefully arrive at class a little bit early instead of late. So thank you.
Okay, I think we've had sorry, Councillor Gerald.
It's probably going to go off what you're going to say. I think at the end of the day, I would agree with Councillor Todd that we're already doing it, and everybody's opinion here is valid. I think there's a much larger transportation conversation to be had. I don't think what we decide here tonight is carved in stone. So I think it's time we there's a motion. I think we see where we land with it.
Thank you for that. And I do believe that through our conversations, we have some amendments to that motion. Is that what you wanted to speak
Yes, I just
to?
wanted
Yeah.
to clarify some of the language in the motion, just to reflect some of the discussion. So it sounded like that the direction is going to be, I'm not going to read the whereas clauses, but it sounds like it says, now be it resolved that council directs staff to consult with Port Hope High School and present to council a plan for free public transit for Port Hope High School students, including a public transit schedule that aligns with Port Hope High School's bell schedule and accommodates extracurricular activities at the Port Hope High School for consideration in the 2025 annual budget. Is that correct?
Deputy Mayor?
I think
Sorry, was there an addition just before we move on?
No,
Okay.
no, I'm not, no.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
I think based on the conversation, would it also make sense to change, including considerations for a schedule that aligns with? And that way we can look at the implications of that as part of that decision.
Yes, and that leaves open the possibility of early arrivals to school as well. That's okay. I was right with you, Adam. I got to school 45 minutes before the bell rang, so. Okay, so we do have that amended last part of the motion on the table. Is that satisfactory to both of the movers and seconders? Any further discussions? All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Okay, moving on to updates and new business. There are a few, so I'm going to try to get through them as quickly as I can. The first is just some updates on the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation and Orange Shirt Day from yesterday. There were many different things that were happening in the community over the last number of days. The first was the screening of the documentary, I Am the Magpie River, at the Capitol Theatre on September 29th. The event was fully financially supported by Northumberland County. We supported it through accessing the Capitol Theatre. And I also want to thank specifically Kate Schuker and Matt Blundell for ensuring that the documentary was in the right format for us to be able to show. I'd also like to extend my thanks to Chief Tanner Simpson of Alderville Nation for organizing a panel and beginning the discussions in the community about the concept of legal personhood for Ganaraska River and Rice Lake. The event was well attended. Councillor Todd was there. The documentary was quite moving on the large screen, and I think it was a good preliminary discussion, and we had a Q&A period, and I think the chief went away with some ideas and next steps that he will be moving forward with. The second event was the Every Child Matters Walk on September the 30th on the actual day at Alderville First Nation in the morning to honor and to bring awareness to what Orange Shirt represents and to encourage those in attendance to answer calls to for truth and reconciliation. And the walk started with a really moving prayer, and the walk was led by children, which was very fitting. And the third event was organized by Marcia Smoke from Alderville Nation right here in Memorial Park. She's also the new Southeast Regional Chief of the Anishinaabe Nation, which includes Northumberland County. And the afternoon program was full of amazing singing and drumming from women from Curve Lake. They were drumming on an instrument called the conundrum, which was a canoe that had been made into a drum. There's only 3 of them in existence. The other one is in someone's living room, the person who actually created it. The other one is in the Peterborough Canoe Museum, and we had the privilege of listening to the third one in the park, and it was a wonderful experience. She shared a lot of very important lived experiences. Everybody in attendance learned a lot. She gave us some very important reminders around language to use when we are talking about First Nations, indigeneity, traditional territories. She raised the issue of pretendism, which was also, or pretendians, I should say, those who claim to be Indigenous and are not, and the kind of impact that that has on First Nations communities. And she also talked about the real structural harm that's done through denialism of residential schools and residential school survivors. So there were 2 days of a really many different activities, a lot of reflection, a lot of learning, a lot of engagement, and of course, always encouragement for continued action in this space. The other update I have is around our 2025 budget engagement. This is really exciting. We have had almost 500 responses to the survey. This is a new record for the municipality, but we're not stopping there. We are, as a council, a number of, actually, I think all of us are going out over the next number of days to engage directly with the community. We'll be giving out postcards, showing folks how to get online, and really encouraging everybody to participate in this very, very important process. And so I put a challenge out to the community. Let's see if we can get to at least 1,000 responses. That should be our goal. And even better, if we could get 10% of our constituents to engage, that would be that would give us so much information to move forward. So look out for your councillors. We'll be out in the community in both wards over the next week, and we will be encouraging and inspiring everybody to engage in this very, very important process. A few other things that I'll just mention, and I'm sure that Councillor Clare will talk about her experience attending the Canadian Emergency Preparedness and Climate Change Adoption Convention. But I also want to mention that there was an amazing steel pan concert in the park on September the 28th. I want to congratulate the Northumberland Diverse Peoples Coalition for their work in this. It truly was such an amazing event to experience. A number of our council members also participated in the Hike, Bike, and Bark for Hospice on the 29th of September. On that same date, I attended the Muslim community of Northumberland Barbecue in Coburg. Let's see, there's a number of upcoming events which I'm not going to mention. We'll be able to talk about those at our next council meeting and update. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over. Oh, sorry, one last thing, just a reminder about the Mayor's Art Contest. Not to forget that the deadline for that is October the 8th. The full contest details are at porthope.ca/mayors/corner. Please get your submissions in. Doesn't have to be a drawing or painting. It can be any kind of art form. And we're calling on all young artists, right from kindergarten all the way from grade 12, to express to us why they love Port Hope. And there will be prizes, and the winning entries will be featured at Town Hall, and maybe at some point even featured on some of our cards or our Christmas cards coming up. So lots of opportunities, and we really would like to get some submissions in, and we got lots of great ones last year. So at this point, I'm just going to turn it over to my councillors for any updates that they would like to share. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. Yeah, I would like to just share briefly. It was a great experience attending the convention in Ottawa last week. Unfortunately, it meant I wasn't in chambers with you all last Tuesday, but I did learn a lot from emergency management professionals across the country on things that we can all be doing to keep our properties and ourselves safe from things like flooding and extreme winds and things like that. I'm working on just a summary report with links to all sorts of fantastic resources that will be a benefit, not just to the municipality, but also to other community partners and individual residents. And I will submit that as correspondence, and we'll make sure that that gets elevated to a future agenda so that everybody who's interested can take a look and access those resources.
Thank you. Any other counselors? Yes, Counselor Adam.
Thank you. So I don't have my normal updates that I would do about going to the different events that we have or what's the upcoming, because it's going to take too long to do all that stuff. But the mayor already stole my thunder because I was going to talk about the budget stuff. So the municipal budget is your tax dollars at work, and I think it's very, very important that that you do share your voice with us. So when you see us at the different locations around town in the next couple of weeks, please do come up to us. Please talk to us, and please fill out these surveys. So for myself, I know I'm going to be at the rec center Thursday evening, probably around 5 till 8 or so. I know that I'll be joined with Councillor Attridge there at the Jack Burger Sports Complex. Probably be there about 5:30 till about 8 o'clock, as the Port Hope Panthers are also playing. So got to make sure that we then pack the Jack and watch that game. That'll be fun. But when you do see us around, please do come and engage with us. We want to hear what you have to say, so that we don't have, the communication in the future saying that we weren't there to be engaged. So we do want that. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Counselor. And there will be a whole diversity of places, from transfer stations to beer stores to grocery stores to some of our local businesses to Walton Street. So we will definitely be out and about because we're all committed to public engagement on this issue. Any other updates from the table? Okay. So we'll move on now to question period. It's now time for question period. And remember, the purpose of question period is to make inquiries of council related to matters of municipal business. Please note, it's not meant to be an avenue to ask questions of staff. If you do have questions specifically to council members, you can ask them now. Yes, I haven't finished. Sorry.
I'll let you get to your question.
I still have a bit of a script to get to. I want to highlight that if your questions are operational in nature, they may be best answered by a member of staff following the meeting. Contact information for our directors and senior staff are available by the door. If you have operational questions best addressed by further conversation with staff, please take their information and reach out, and we can also help to facilitate those linkages. And we ask that if you do step up to ask a question, please state your name and address. And of course, that infamous purple button needs to be pushed. So now we will start with councillors. Any questions for your fellow council members? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I have a question of you, Mayor Elena, and it's actually a request for an update. I watched the most recent county council meeting, as I most often do, and I noticed there was an update about the county official plan process. And given that's been a topic of great interest in the community and by this council, and I assume most of us don't watch county council meetings, I wondered if you could provide that update to the community.
Yes, I was going to wait until the final report came from county staff before I provided an update, but I'm happy to give a verbal update on that and any other issues that might be of interest to the public. And that is that they have received numerous feedback from not just Port Hope, but other municipalities in the county. The staff is taking all of that into account. And there probably won't be anything coming back in any form of report or recommendations until the new year. I think the good news is that the staff did receive the feedback in very strong terms. I also believe that the conversations that were had between all of the other council members at that table gave a very strong message that we wanted to see more work and more reflection before anything came forward in a revised report. So the good news is the engagement process was successful. I think even the better news is that there is going to be time devoted to actually carefully reviewing that input, and that it's not going to be rushed, and we'll see something in the new year. Any other questions from around the table? Okay. I will then open it up to questions from the public. Anybody that would like to ask us a question, please step up to the microphone.
Hi, can you hear me? Thank you. Anyway, thanks for the opportunity to ask some questions. First of all, let me congratulate council on moving on the review of the bylaws. We think that's really an important move. And we're talking about bylaw 60-2023. And we welcome the opportunity to participate in that review. And we hope that our presentation that we made last week made some contribution to trying to identify some of the problems and obstacles to, democracy in the process. Mind you, as we see the review, it provides a great many more questions than answers. And for example, what's the nature of this review? What does it mean to engage the public in this review? Will it be an active or passive, a questionnaire, or is it going to be focus groups? I mean, there are other alternatives to it in terms of quality of research. What's the focus of it? How, is it, more participatory or passive? What are the goals? Who shall determine, for example, whether it's efficiency you're looking for or engagement, what mechanisms promote maximum participation of citizens in the political process locally? It's kind of interesting. I studied political science and taught the subject matter many years ago. But it was really interesting that, there was rare attention to local politics. It was just not much in the literature, very few. It was only, when I was teaching a course in politics for journalism students that I realized there was a thing called city council, there. And so, I dumped them there to go find out and look at what's going on. So it really is kind of a new thing in to get used to, and since we've, moved to, a rural community, have we had so much, participation in the political process, and we appreciate that, at the same time, there's a concern that we have that it's going to focus on, the bylaw, 60-2023. But there are two other issues that we had put in there, and I know they're controversial, but the thing is, I've never kind of backed away from a good discussion. And let me start by saying that, how can we duck the issue of unequal representation for Ward 2 without kind of violating, the principle of, diversity, equity, and inclusiveness, and that aren't we doing the same thing, here by ducking that? And I think it's kind of important. And if you think it's an issue that's going to go away, it's not. The discussions we've had with friends, family, and with friends and neighbors, this has been a key sore point in this amalgamation process. And also, the other issue, which is also, I know, controversial, the issue of making commitments in the international arena. I think it's important to pay attention to, important principles that develop, particularly from, struggles going on in the third world, for example, or in our first world, that are pretty brutal, when we do these things, when we, without, and I'm talking about what troubles us most, is that there is no discussion with the community, with the public. It's been ignored, for both those issues, And I understand, we've made commitments in principle, to these things as guides. But at the same time, you got to bear in mind that this thing called sovereignty, and this thing called the state, and that state, its ability to govern, is only with the consent of the governed, which means that the public has to be notified of what's going on, have the wherewithal and the time to discuss this, debate it, whatever. Then you look at the outcomes. So we ask that you and us as citizens think about this and come back another day to engage in public discussion. It will happen one way or another. Thank you very much. If you have any questions of me.
No, thank you. Thank you for all those questions, and certainly the input that you've provided will definitely inform the review process that will be starting, and any of the additional questions that you pose will be. We've recorded them, and staff will be able to respond to some of the ones, especially in terms of what you were asking at the very beginning of your talk. But I do have to say that Graham White would not agree with you around the depth of local government knowledge and scholarship. There are many very robust programs across this country that look at local government and governance issues. And so I would say that there's a lot of really good thinking that has happened in that space and continues to happen in that space. And I'm speaking as a political scientist too. So,
And the thing is, I'd say that I join you and my colleagues, for starting to pay attention to that field.
And just one other thing that I do want to add is that anything that this council has done in regards to any kind of UN resolutions has been discussed and debated at this table. It has been made public for input and discussion before anything was in fact passed. And I think we've been very clear. We are not signatories to any kind of international declarations, but we are informed by the spirit of those, and especially in terms of the truth and reconciliation space. It is one of the actions that the federal government has laid out in one of its reports to us. Part of the 94 actions towards truth and reconciliation is for municipal governments to engage with UNDRIP. So I think that there's some things that we look forward in the review process to explain and clarify, and also to answer some of the questions that you have put forward. And I think that most of us have a very deep appreciation of the difference between developing and developed countries as well on the international landscape. So, but thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Deputy Mayor.
I'm going to respond today because I didn't get a chance to respond after your presentation last week. But I think the question that you asked around where is the focus going to be? Is it going to be on efficiency or on participation? And I think sometimes those two goals can be at odds with one another. And I think you're right to point that out. I can share that my experience of the process this time last year and the meetings that I had with staff who were working on the changes to the procedural bylaw, the sense that I had of staff and council at that time is that we were looking at participation and ways to foster more engagement from the public. I think the salient question this time around in the review is going to be, did the approaches we put into place work? Are we being successful in fostering more engagement? And if not, what are the things that we want to tweak so that the intent is better realized through an updated policy?
And that's right. I think you have to start at the beginning of it. You've got to bring those participants in at the early stage of the project, not just formulate them in isolation, and then bring in the actors, the political actors, the public. So I mean, that's what we're really saying is necessary. We see that problem in all sorts of research. I mean, we abide by what we call participatory research, and in many of the studies that Dale and I have undertaken, I mean, what we've basically done, before we get off the ground, we invite the participants into designing the study, and that maybe be mindful of that. We've found that very useful. Thank you for. listening. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you for the questions and thank
I
you
just
for
want to say
the
that
discussion.
Shrishma has been, wonderful with us and guiding us through the labyrinth of
Yep.
city politics.
And I think we're all looking forward to going through this process. But I also think that one thing that we do need to keep in mind as we're continuing to work on improvements is how we fare in comparison to other municipalities, right? Because we need to have a little bit of those comparative standard metrics. And I do think that on issues of procedural bylaw, even the first instance of engagement when we got 100 and almost 140 responses to a survey, that's head and shoulders above much larger municipalities that put far more resources into engagement processes. So I don't think there's a magic silver bullet. I don't think
No.
there's a panacea for it. I think we're all learning and progressing, and we look forward to the review and having as many of our constituents participate in that process.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can appreciate that. I mean, before doing this, one of the first things we did basically is to do a survey of all the procedural bylaws, in Northumberland County. So we were mindful that there were differences. I mean, some weren't much of a difference, but some were very dramatically different.
Thank you again. Councillor Less.
I just want to chat about one topic because you've got lots of questions and we can't answer them all. But the one on representation, rural representation, most every voting community that I know of, it's based on population. A councillor will have so many constituents. And we have 6 councillors, not counting the mayor, and 18,000 people. So it's about 3,000 people per councillor. And the rural area is about 6,000 people. So you have representation of direct one-to-one, same as the rest of the community. And when we tackle a problem, let's take Sylvan Bridge. That wasn't a Ward 2 or problem. That was a Port Hope problem, and we solved it amongst all of us, not just 2 of us. So I don't quite follow your logic or what you're proposing in terms of representation.
Well, they're not all the same. I mean, you have to look at the context in which they come. But not to recognize, I mean, these are 2 independent communities at the time of the amalgamation. And there wasn't much of a democratic process to bring these people into the fold with the rest of Port Hope. They had their own municipal government. They had their own way of budgeting. And I understand from talking with the previous CAO of the Port Hope Township, Hope Township, that they handle things very well, and they were able to manage and maintain a relationship. But sometimes you have to go beyond looking at things as head counting. That's what gets you in trouble. I mean, that's why there are so many people that are, in a sense, disaffected, from the rest of Port Hope. So it's important to keep that in mind. I know there's no magic solution to this whole thing. I wish I had one, but there isn't.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I hope we can discuss it at a
Any
workout.
any
Well,
other
we should do it at the gym. You're always there.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have noted the questions. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I have three questions, two of which stem from a response to questioning as to the September the 3rd Committee of the Whole meeting.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you mind, please, your name and your address before?
Oh, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
thank
my
you.
name's Martin Field. I'm from Somerville Street in Oshawa. Yeah, okay. So, my apologies. Yeah, I have three questions, two of which stem from a response to questioning at the September the 3rd Committee of the Whole meeting, whereas a member of staff responded that the sheltering operational agreement expenses between the town and Northumberland Humane Society is fixed. I believe that was the word that was mentioned. Noting item 5C in the August 2022 agreement between the town and Northumberland Humane Society provides an opportunity to revise funding. My questions are, will committee assure me that the agreement is not set in stone and that should operational costs stemming from any unforeseen reason since the date of signing occur, for example, this could include additional costs relating to a TNR program or greater enforcement duties stemming from potential enactment of a cat no roaming bylaw, that this agreement can indeed be reviewed and amended as needed. And second question is, will Committee of the Whole assure me that the Animal Control Bylaw 60-2022 can also be amended as required to provide for a TNR program and or a cat no roaming bylaw? And my third and final question is, noting the motion on September the 3rd, it made no mention of a no roaming bylaw provision. Will Committee of the Whole assure me that such a provision remains an item to be reviewed? Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. And I believe that we have noted them, but I also believe that our director would like to address some of it.
Thank you. I think I'm being quoted with respect to my comment in response to a question at the meeting. So I did commit at the time that our bylaw is fixed with some exceptions. That being said, like any agreement with any organization, that can always be changed. So council provided me the direction to bring back a report with respect to the Northumberland Humane Society's progress on a TNR program. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we're working with our colleagues at NHS to bring forward that report, answer your questions here tonight, and provide a path forward.
I just hope the provision for a no roaming bylaw is still before you to consider, because that is a very instrumental part of a TNR program. Otherwise, it's like if you visualize the fire service trying to put out a fire while someone's putting gasoline on it at the same time. You know, that's just all I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm confident that that component will inform and be included in the staff report that will be forthcoming to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If you can just state your name and address, please.
You know who I am. Susan Smith Canton. Okay. My questions are also about the September 3rd meeting. I came with stats and tried to show you how important it was with the, my step stool would be nice. Yeah, I tried to portray how important it was with the overpopulation of cats and what's happening out there. And I left here with a motion, which I thank you all very much, that you understand there is a problem. The problem that I'm having now that the motion was written, it doesn't seem that the motion's going to take care of the issues that I came with that I thought you understood. If we wait until now and the end of the year, we're probably going to have a few hundred extra kittens to look after. And then we'll bring into the spring mating, and there's going to be probably 1,500. And knowing that every shelter is full, the Humane Society is full, they're all overwhelmed. That's why I said it was kind of, it's a time thing here. I know you're busy. I know you have other things other than cats to look after, but it would just save everyone, the caregivers, Northumberland Humane Society, all the shelters. It would just give them help to so they don't have the explosion of cats. And these people, the TNR people, would help the municipality by getting it under control. Without them and without acting on it quickly, the population is going to grow exponentially. So the questions that I have regarding the motion were, why would it take 4 months to reach out to the Humane Society? And what would be the expected timeline for hearing back from the Humane Society on this matter? In addition, if funding is required, the window for the 2025 budget has gone. So how does council plan to address the funding needs for this situation, which kind of has to be acted on soon? we can't control the mating.
Thank you for coming forward. Thank you for your additional questions. Now, I do know we're not to direct questions directly to staff during this meeting, but because the director already chose to answer some questions, I'm going to just ask whether or not we have a sense of the timelines for the staff report that you mentioned.
Thank you. I think it was noted the direction came out September 3rd. I'm not sure what the reference to waiting 4 months to reach out to the Humane Society was, but if I didn't reach out that night, I reached out the next morning, and that conversation continues with the Humane Society. As it relates to the budget, we've heard here tonight that we're undergoing our budget survey to plan for 2025. So the window of opportunity certainly hasn't closed there. With respect to presenting a report back to council, I don't have a date. I need some additional information from our Humane Society, but I suspect it will be, if not the next committee of the whole meeting, the committee of the whole meeting after that.
Oh, you're going to have to just turn the microphone back on, Cecile. Thank you.
So your statement that was in the motion said that staff would reach out to the Humane Society by year end.
I believe that Councillor Mink and Deputy Mayor would like to weigh in on this.
Thank you. So I just want to thank you, Martin, as well for the question. So I just want to clarify a few things. So to Martin, the question I asked to Director Gilmer about the budget, the levy from the Humane Society, I was asking a question in the context of, do they come back annually with an increase? And that's where the director said, no, it's fixed. It doesn't mean it can't be changed. He just said that they don't come back with a new levy that we discuss on an annual basis. To your question, yes, I do believe that when I had made the motion, Les did ask a timeline to contact the Humane Society, which was the end of the year. You are correct, but now we're hearing from the director that he did respond right away. So, and then thank you for your other question about the funding is, yes, after I left that meeting, I started thinking myself, well, if we don't know soon, we're going to miss that window for funding and budget. So hopefully I have confidence our staff will connect behind the scenes and provide us with that information, hopefully before budget time.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
I think my understanding of the wording of the motion, I can see sort of where the ordering of the words is maybe a cause of confusion, but I think the intent was that we would be receiving the report back by the end, before the end of December. And recognizing, I know I do it too, I did it earlier tonight, whenever we bring forward, new ideas, we feel they're really important. We want them to be a top priority. I'm guilty of that this very evening, right? But staff are human beings and they can only have so many top priorities that are due next week, right? So sometimes we sort of make eye contact. I remember that night, so we were looking over at the CAO and director, what is a reasonable timeline to get this done, given that you already have a workload and a work plan, right? So I think it's not that it's 4 months is actually kind of short in some cases, because there are other things that have been pending for significantly longer than that, simply because they're just not the top priority this week, right?
And just to add, I have full confidence that you have a staff and a council who have heard your presentation, who have heard your questions and concerns, and are working as quickly as can be. And I know that that can be frustrating, because everybody who comes with a delegation or a topic to this council table is seeing through their lens their issue or their issue of importance. And yet, as the deputy mayor has noted, we have so many different competing files and issues and projects, and our staff is some of the hardest working staff, and they do their best. And I'm very confident that in this instance, they're going to do their best to get us a report as quickly as possible.
Right. And I thank you, but yes, that kind of set my mind at ease a little bit, because I thought year end, and then, yeah, because it's getting really bad. The Humane Society, though, had the TNR, I guess, trying to get it in motion. So it's not like it might be a new thing to them, so maybe they'll be able to get that quicker.
Thank you, and thank you for
very
coming.
much.
And I believe we have one last question, or a couple more. Oh, sorry, a couple more questions from the audience. Yes.
Hi, Dan James from Welcome, 3191 County Road 10. I'm going to preface my questions and my concerns with a slight bit of ignorance, and I may be directing these questions to you instead, maybe the school board. Going back to the notice of motions 5.1 in regards to the busing and the community travel up to the high school. I ask if the council sees a correlation between the student population decrease and the school board allowing busing over to Cobourg high schools. I hear in the community, I'm not allowed to be a member of the board up at the high school yet because I don't have a student there, but I do actively communicate there. It's not just safe travel to the schools that we're seeing the decrease of student population. It's poaching of students to the Cobourg schools due to different curriculums, different classes, different teaching studies there. So I asked the council, do you recognize the correlation between the decrease of allowing the busing there? The follow-up to that is the boundaries are at 3.2 kilometers. I live in the municipality. I live in Welcome. That's 3.1 kilometers to the corner. So you're going to ask my 13, 14, 15-year-old to walk along County Road 10 up Highway 2 to the Port Hope High School. I understand Jocelyn doesn't have any sidewalks, but now you're asking my child to walk in an 80-kilometer-an-hour zone. And I know these questions aren't for you, they're for the school board. I'm just trying to put the difference together of why we can bus to Cobourg, and then it's put on the municipality of Port Hope to rectify the problem of busing internally, but they're going outside the community and they're not willing to bus 3.1 kilometers from rural students.
Thank you. Those are really good questions and important challenges to confront. And I know that both Councillor Todd and the Deputy Mayor want to weigh in on this, but I want to assure you and assure families and the public and soon to be high school students and current high school students that there is much work that is happening in collaboration with the board to move forward on a number of improvements to increase the enrollment at Port Hope High School. Transportation is no doubt one of the key issues, but in a meeting with the Director of Education, the Superintendent, and the trustee, there has been a proposal put forward for a multi-pronged approach to improve the programming, the services, the extracurricular opportunities, and the opportunities to connect with Loyalist College, among other institutions, and how to improve the facilities of the high school. So the transportation question is not going away anywhere. I think there's still lots that needs to be thought through. It is an important part of that multi-pronged approach, but there is a comprehensive plan that needs to be implemented in order for that high school to realize its full potential in this community. And as I said earlier, to maybe turn the current and have Cobourg students coming to Port Hope, because we will have the best programming and the best services and the best opportunities. And I'd like to turn it over to first to Councillor Todd and then Deputy Mayor, just to elaborate some points, because they've been working in this space for many years.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks for the question. So I started working on the Port Hope High School project in 2019 prior to joining council. At that time, I was working with the former mayor and the former director of education and the former superintendent. We have a lot of formers attached to that. We did a lot of research into what was going on with the high school. At that time, the enrollment was low and there was concern that the school was going to close, which is no longer the case. You're right, transportation was definitely on that list. It was not the only thing. Programming was, specifically the IB program and French immersion were two programs at Cobourg that students were taking advantage of, and that got them over to those schools. The IB program is no longer around, French immersion is. So we were looking at all sorts of different ways in which we could attract students back in. The reason why the transportation issue comes forward through the municipality is we control that aspect. So that's one of the things that's really in our control to be able to deal with. The 3.2 kilometer. So let's talk about that, because we had big conversations about 3.2 kilometers with the board. That is a number that is set by the board. There is a budgetary factor that comes with that, as far as what it looks like to be able to get busing to the students. The reason why busing came forward, or I brought forward busing with the help of the deputy mayor, is that radius isn't changing. So it goes to, so how can we solve some of that? The conversations can always continue with the board as to whether we change it, but it would change their budget, and that's what we'd have to look at.
Deputy Mayor.
And I know I've mentioned it already this evening, but please stay tuned and keep your eye out for that survey, because the more we can collect data and the more responses we have with this kind of input, the stronger a case we can put forward as a community, not just the municipality, but as a community, to what we need for Port Hope High School as our community school. I would like to add, though, as well, that one of the things that has come through really strongly through the community listening campaign, there were dozens and dozens of conversations that took place over the course of the summer with a variety of different informants. One of the things that came through really strongly was a sense that we need to think about not just this idea of revitalization, but also recognizing the strengths that are already at that high school. I can tell you that current students and parents of current students really bristle when we say words like revitalize, because as far as they're concerned, they go to a fantastic school already. And they know that there's a lot of maybe a lack of understanding in the community about the resources and the programming that already exist. And so that's going to be, I think, an important part of the conversation as well. As far as picking up on Councillor Todd's comment about the budget constraints, I don't think that the school board, and specific, we're talking about KPR District School Board, not the Catholic Board. The Catholic Board has their own policies about busing, and that's what sort of buses people to St. Mary's. But as far as KPR District School Board, I doubt very much that the number 3.2 kilometers is based on that's the most reasonable number. That is what's feasible across communities, across what is the largest school board in the province. I would almost guarantee that decision is what is our budget that we can afford? And that is provincial. That comes from the Ministry of Education. And how many kids can we bus within those budget constraints? So I think it's also important to ask that question of your provincial elected representative and take that question to the Ministry of Education and the trustee.
And Councillor Mink.
Thank you. So I appreciate the question. And I think it's very valid. I think something that's not being discussed, that's being missed, is the stigma. And there are students who will not go to Port Hope because of the stigma. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have to go overcome. There's parents I know of who are driving their children to Coburg, so they could just as easily drive them to Port Hope. But they're going there because their child will not go to Port Hope High School. And we need to be very upfront about that reality and that truth. And as far as the 3.2 kilometer radius, that's actually the Central Ontario School Transportation Network who designs that. And that is something that when we look at the landscape of an urban center such as Oshawa, Toronto, whatever, there's plenty of sidewalks, plenty of paths and trails. And then when we look at small towns, it's not the same. So that is something where I think the school board gets the privilege of not increasing their levy, where again, the municipalities now have to bear that burden. So it's very complex, but thank you for your question.
Just to end by saying that I'm quite confident that the board is aware of the community interest, advocacy, push, and the stance that the status quo is no longer tenable for this community. And I'm sure that we'll be able to share some updates as that work continues over the next number of months.
Thank you. I just wanted to condone what you were saying there about moving forward and understanding that the municipality is helping out with the busing of this. I can appreciate what we have and what you're doing to help that process. And I like your idea of something between the school board and the council of the conditions of the student pass, maybe having that as proof of enrollment to Port Hope High School.
And do you have a final question for us? Or
Nope, that's it.
okay,
Thank
thank you. And I believe we have one last, yes, that would be you, Ed.
Ed White, Mill Street, sorry. I had three, I'm narrowed it down to one here. Given that this is a public forum and we have two separate nights that we attend, we have a council and we have a committee of the whole. Now, according to the front page of this, there are no presentations or deputations at the committee of the whole. This is what it says right on the front. So the committee of the whole is where we get to ask questions, but there's no presentations or deputations allowed at the committee of the whole. So that means they're allowed at the council meetings where we're not allowed to ask questions of the deputations and whatnot. Given that there's some pretty important ones that come up at council meetings, PHAI, different budget meetings and stuff like that. I'm just a little confused as to maybe they should be switched over so that when you make a deputation or a presentation, it's at committee of the whole so that we can ask questions, as opposed to at a council meeting where it's just, yep, thanks very much, see you later.
Thank you, Ed. And obviously, this is part of what is going to be looked at during the review process, and your comments this evening will inform that review process. So it's been recorded and definitely will be part of something that is considered moving forward. The issue of where it is appropriate to include or not include questions, it's not the first time that this has come to this
No, it's
council,
important. Yeah.
a council table, and it is very important. And so we will continue to look at that, and certainly your voice is heard and will be included as we move forward with the review process. And I know that the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Mink would like to make a comment.
Thanks. I think I want to pick up on, I think there was an important thing in the middle of your question there. I think what you're suggesting is that members of the public be provided the opportunity to ask questions of people who come to present to council.
Exactly.
And I would just like, I got into a public conversation about this on Port Hope Politics earlier this week. And I'd just like to say that's kind of leaning towards a form of direct democracy that I don't think is what we do here. What we do here is representative democracy. When people come and speak to council, they are here to speak to council as your elected representatives. I don't think it would be a fair, in my view, I don't think it would be a fair request that anyone who comes to share information with council also be subject to essentially a public hearing where they also have to answer questions from members of the public. I suggest that there are opportunities already afforded in our procedures that allow members of public to propose questions that should be asked of those presenters. The agendas are posted in advance where you're able to review the presentations, like the PowerPoint slides or the information in advance. And should you have questions of those presenters, you can contact your elected representatives with those questions, and we may then ask those questions on behalf of the community and residents that we represent during council meetings. But council meetings are still council meetings, right? So people who are coming to present are not coming to do a presentation like a town hall to the community. They're coming to present to council. And I also suggested that when it comes to groups, community stakeholders like the PHAI or the Humane Society or other groups where there's a strong interest, I would encourage those groups to look at having their own forums, public forums, where residents can engage with them and ask questions. But I don't believe that council meetings are the appropriate forum for that.
But they don't have the public forums and whatnot. That's the problem, I think.
Thanks, Ed. I'm just going to turn it over to Councillor Mink because she wants to make a comment to you as well.
Thank you. So through the chair, I was going to say almost exactly what the deputy mayor said, but just to add another layer as well, is that when someone does a presentation, we're receiving that. So if the question comes to us as a council, we can't also answer that question because we don't know. We're not like, we don't have the answers. People can come and present anything to us. So if you're asking the question to council, we can't necessarily answer on behalf of that presenter either.
Thanks. Thank you, Ed. Just turn on. Okay, you've got it on.
That's why I'm just saying it just seems backwards to me because I thought the idea of the committee of the whole was that ideas are presented, information is exchanged, and you guys get 2 weeks to discuss it amongst yourselves or whatever way you do it. And then at the next council meeting, it gets voted on whether or to go ahead or not go ahead or whatever. It just seems that it's backwards to me. But
Thank you, Ed, and sincerely, we will take your feedback into account, and as we do with all the feedback in terms of this review process that we'll be undertaking. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So it is seeing no more questions in the audience. This concludes our business to be covered on today's agenda, and I'm in a position to adjourn the meeting of the Committee of the Whole at 9:25 p.m. Thank you very much for everybody who was in attendance today.